The reason for Conor McGregor's withdrawal from his upcoming fight against Michael Chandler has finally been revealed to be a broken pinky toe. And in this video, we're going to talk about what exactly that means, how it's treated, and if it really is something that warranted McGregor withdrawing, because a lot of people are going to be obviously very judgmental. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and my goal on this channel is to teach you about the medical side of the sports world. So we finally have heard what the reason was for McGregor withdrawing. And I think specifically we knew it was some type of injury, but nobody had heard what the injury was until today when McGregor shared these details, including an x-ray of his foot and some pictures of some of the bruising and just what his foot looked like. So let's just talk about what we're seeing here on the x-ray. We'll look at our anatomy, how we treat a fracture like this, and then whether or not it was appropriate to withdraw, because yeah, it's a combat sport. There's going to be some bumps and bruises. So what we're looking at here, the outside or lateral aspect of the foot, and this is specifically going to be an AP view where we're looking in a top down on the foot. So this is going to be the lateral or the outside of the left foot. Medial is going to be over here. This bone right here is going to be the fifth metatarsal. This is going to be the fourth, the third, the second, etc. The fifth metatarsal is where a Jones fracture occurs. So a fracture at this lower portion, the base of the fifth metatarsal, is going to be potentially a Jones fracture versus a metatarsal shaft fracture. Then as we get out to the toe bones, those are called the phalanges. Specifically, there's a proximal, a middle, and a distal phalange. The proximal one is the one closest to the rest of the body, the middle, and then the distal is the one furthest out. This fracture pattern is then an oblique fracture, potentially a spiral fracture, that looks to be a little bit displaced. So if we really try and zoom in here on the detail of this, you can see where that fracture line goes obliquely through the shaft of that proximal phalanx of the pinky toe, and there is a little bit of displacement. We see this little step off right there, and so some of that will factor in to whether or not something like a surgery needs to be done. So this is a, I would say, minimally displaced oblique fracture of the fifth proximal phalanx of the pinky toe. By far the vast majority of lesser toe fractures, meaning the second through the fifth toe, do not require surgery. Typically only if it's like an open dislocation, if it's severely comminuted, meaning a bunch of different little pieces, or severely displaced. Those are the only times you're gonna have to do surgery, but it's very rare to need a surgery for an isolated lesser toe fracture, and I do not suspect that McGregor needed surgery for this one. One of the things that we'll look at externally, I had to clear out the bruising here because YouTube doesn't like that as much, is whether or not there's any rotation. So we talk about the displacement from where the bones are aligned, but is there any angulation or rotation? And so one of the ways you can look at that externally is this pinky toe curled under or wrapping under, or is it angulated off in this direction, suggesting more instability in the toe? For here, we don't see anything like that for McGregor when he shared this picture. So again, another factor that makes non-operative, just basic non-surgical management, almost certainly a possibility here. To treat a fracture like this, I'm gonna put somebody in potentially a post-operative shoe, just a rigid, flat-soled shoe, for maybe 2 to 4 weeks, really depending on how bad their pain is. But there's not a lot that you have to aggressively do to immobilize a fracture like this. A lot of it comes down to level of pain. Now, certainly, if you go out and you kick, you run, you jump, you're gonna have worsening pain. You might move that fracture more and make it harder to heal, but this isn't something that would even require like a walking boot. You're gonna do some rigid footwear mobilization for a short time and should be a fracture that heals well in that average, 4 to 8, average 6-week sort of time frame. So that's the last question then, is was this an injury warranted of McGregor withdrawing? Yeah, I think so, absolutely. It's not a fracture that's going to have that drastic of an effect on just your mobility compared to, say, a great toe or a big toe fracture where you're pushing off and you're putting a lot more weight through it. But it's enough of a thing that's going to affect and throw off your ability to, number one, continue your training and keep up your cardio, but then number two, feel confident with your footwork, especially when you're dealing with an athlete who's coming back from a broken leg. You're gonna have a lower threshold for being affected by an injury. So yes, it's a pinky toe. I'm sure he's going to get all kinds of hate online about withdrawing because of a broken pinky toe. But as pinky toe fractures go, that's a pretty good one. And again, when you're coming back at that stage where if you win, you potentially get a title shot. If you lose, you're still kind of spiraling around in this mediocrity level of the competition. I would not go into it with any sort of level of compromise in the foot. At this stage, it would not have been healed for UFC fight upcoming that he would be going against Chandler. And so he would be going into it with a broken toe. And it doesn't matter with the result if there was a toe fracture or not. It could certainly have affected his performance and certainly affected the the rest of his tenure and just upcoming trajectory with the UFC. So I think it was appropriate to withdraw. I don't think you can hold him accountable because yes, it's a toe fracture, but it still is a significant fracture on that outer part of the foot. It's going to hurt. It's going to affect your skill. And so I think he made the appropriate decision. But I agree. This should be something that it depends on how he loses his conditioning with not being able to train, but hopefully, you can certainly still bike. This should be healed within 6 to 8 weeks. And so this is absolutely something that he can still fight later this year, just depending on when they can get a date and he can get his cardio training back up. That's it for the video, everybody. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later.